Well, Michelle, quite a lot was said in the Constitutional Court, but it's very important to note that obviously we're taking this information secondhand, mainly because we're hearing it in Portuguese and then translating it to English. But what we heard, especially from the ruling judge before she started speaking, she spoke about the importance of people adhering to law. Now, you will remember that there's been quite a lot of protest that has taken place in Mozambique, mainly because people have been unhappy with the results. Now, ahead of the results announcement by the CC, we found that people started taking to streets in various areas, blockading streets and so on. And so she spoke quite deeply about how people should not break the law and that people cannot start protesting before the decision has been made. Now, the decision to drop Frelimo from 70.7 to 65% doesn't come as a surprise, really, Michelle, mainly because there were a lot of people that came forward saying that there were some discrepancies. You will remember that the observers spoke about the discrepancies, that the other political parties like Renamo were also part of those people that echoed the sentiments, saying that the discrepancies were there. We know that even the observers did speak about the fact that there were various areas where there were voting stations where they were not allowed to go to, which obviously sparked concerns around how transparent the elections were. Now, at the same time, what we're hearing here is that the judge did speak, or the CC did speak about the fact that there were these 6 parties that came forward and spoke about these issues, which is something that they've highlighted at the same time, but also saying that you will remember that they did say their decision won't be to do the vote count, meaning that they were looking at what was already in the table and they were looking at some of the issues. So the discrepancies that they spoke to are the ones that actually dropped the results, but it doesn't mean that the vote was counted from the bottom to get to this point. Now, that, of course, doesn't come as a surprise that those discrepancies will take away from the 70% that Frelimo had. But essentially, Frelimo remains the winner. But what does that mean for South Africa? That means South Africa now needs to consider those contingency plans, especially when it comes to Mananga, where they did say that they would be redirecting some of the traffic that side should there be any issues. At least now we are hearing that there are fresh protests that are taking place in some areas sporadically around Mozambique. And that means now South Africa must consider that. And that's why I'm going to bring in BMA now to speak to us. As Border Management Authorities Commissioner, it's an important time really to now look at your contingency plans. Tell us or take us through what you're going to do now.
Yeah, no, firstly, Nqobile, maybe let's start by indicating that we have been informed by our colleagues from the Mozambican side, indicating that, yes, the Constitutional Council did confirm that Frelimo did win. And of course, on that basis, we have been told that the opposition people did indicate that indeed, if Frelimo is going to be affirmed, then they are going to enter into what is called a V8 table protest. So on that basis, now as we speak, that particular protest has not necessarily started showing any signs around the port. So as we speak now, we can confirm that we are busy processing the people. Until this morning, we've been able to process around 8,000 people. Around 6,000 were leaving South Africa and just below 2,000 were entering South Africa. So work continues. In terms of cargo, we have stopped the bid of cargo because of this particular threat. But in terms of your question as to whether can we kick our contingency in now, we are not as yet going to kick in the contingency. What we have done now is that, as you can see, members of public order policing are here at the port, so that in case there will be a threat to the port, they will be able to make sure that we protect the port, as it were. And indeed, if the Mozambicans stop the processing and they advise us to do so, we will definitely stop, and that is when we will then activate our plan B, which is the Mananga port of entry.
And I know perhaps it's early to prejudge it, but will you then be making a call to check in Mozambique if those protests are coming closer?
Yeah, no, yes, indeed. I mean, that is what we do all the time. So we keep tabs with the Mozambicans here at the port, but we are also linking up with the head of immigration as well as the head of customs, who are in Maputo themselves. So they keep on guiding us in terms of what is supposed to be the next step. So in this particular instance, they did indicate that although this outcome has been raised, as it were, They are not saying that we need to stop because they are also not stopping. So hence we are continuing to process the people. But again, the trucks, we are not processing them for now. We are processing the people, and then they will be able to guide us in terms of the next step. Remember, this port is meant to operate for 24 hours. So because of that, we are going to be here throughout the night and be able to pick up if they tell us to do any stoppage of processing. Then we will do that. But in terms of the protection, everything is according to plan.
In the past, and just as a closing one, when we saw Resano Garcia coming this side in terms of their protest, did this happen during roundabout this time or later in the evening?
When it happened for the first time, it was around 8 o'clock. Actually, it was between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the evening. That is when they were returning from Maputo, coming into a township called Rasan Garcia, which is also the name of the port. So as they were coming back from Maputo, then that is when they started protesting towards the port. And remember at that time what happened? When they were protesting towards the port, one of the immigration officers shot one of the protesters. And that is when they started burning their cars and they started burning their houses and all of those issues. And that is what led us at that time to close our port to make sure that there is no spill over to the South African side. So that is what happened. So that is why we are saying, even when this has been announced, we are going to just remain here on high alert with members of public order policing, with the military, the border guards, and the general police. On that basis, if there is to be any shift, we will definitely be able to respond accordingly.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. That is Border Management Authority Commissioner. And, Michelle, just highlighting, of course, those concerns over the fact that will this be a safety issue? We already can see on some social medias that people are already on the streets in various parts of Mozambique, obviously reacting to what has now been seen as making sure and keeping Frelimo in charge. This is over 49 years. You will remember that a lot of people that are following on Valencio or behind Valencio are people that are much younger, that have spoken about the fact that they want change. And most of them have been concerned about unemployment, and they've spoken about things like grants that can be given if Valencio is in charge. Now, how they will react will be determined when we see that later.
Certainly. And as we know, that exiled opposition leader Nqobile Madlala said that he would call a popular uprising if the Constitutional Council indeed went ahead and approved the results. He claims that the vote was rigged and that he actually won by 53% and not by the 20% that he got on election day.